Hello and welcome, you knowledge seekers. The first day of spring is right around the corner. Have you seen the flowers blossoming, heard the birds chirping, or have even felt the changes in the wind? Well, if you haven't as yet, do not worry. You will experience them soon enough. This week, I have a very interesting episode for you. I will be presenting Spotify's privacy policy to you, but first, I have some news from the data privacy world that might interest you. Let's get into it. In the data privacy world, there are a lot of developments happening almost every week, it seems. France and United States experienced unprecedented cyber attacks, and in the UK, many people were unable to use public services because of a mix-up in the system. All of these data breaches are because of one issue, and that is the legacy system that has been passed on and on for years. Let's dive further into this. For those of you who do not know what a legacy system is, it is old technology that has been around for many years and new technology has only been integrated to it. The risk involved with these legacy systems are compatibility issues with newer tech, security vulnerabilities, data quality issues due to having outdated and incomplete data, and it takes a lot of time and money to keep these systems updated, but there is a lack of support in maintaining these systems. Organizations with legacy systems are government institutions, healthcare insurance companies, banks, etc. And the one thing that entices hackers to attack is the sensitive data that these legacy systems possess. This is the case with the major attack that happened in France last month. Many of the French agencies were hit and millions of citizens were affected. The hackers got access to the data comprising primarily of personal details of the data subjects. These include social security numbers, health insurance information, as well as banking details of healthcare professionals. Right now, CNIL, the French Data Protection Authority, is investigating the data breach but has advised the French citizens to be vigilant about suspicious communications. So, to my French listeners, check in with your parents and your friends and spread the news not to answer suspicious calls and emails. In the UK, the Home Office experienced a data breach. From what I've gathered from the UK news sources such as The Guardian, is that the breach involved the altering of data. So names, photos, and immigration status have been mixed up for more than 76,000 individuals. It seems that the source of the data breach is in the person centric data platform. And there was a change made in the database that linked individual records in order to improve their accuracy for several million people. So, two or more people have their biographical and biometric details linked incorrectly, causing merged identities and leaving people unable to prove their rights to work, rent housing, or access free NHS treatment. And in the United States, there was an unprecedented attack there, this time on an insurance company, United Health Group subsidiary, Change Healthcare. Currently, not much detail is being presented, but the US Department of Health is investigating the extent of the attack. Well, some of you are wondering right now, why is this news important to this week's podcast? Well, it is linked to the question I asked you last week, which was organizations should protect personal information by which of the following methods? A. Physical measures. B. Organizational measures. C. Technological measures. Or D. All of the above. During the week, I sneaked a peek at some of the answers on my various platforms, and it seemed that majority of you stated technological measures, such as cybersecurity measures, so firewalls, and all the cool computer technology. But the answer is D, all of the above. Yes, listeners, an organization should protect personal information through a combination of physical measures, organizational measures, and technological measures to ensure that your data is protected by a comprehensive data security policy. And as a data protection officer, it is my job to ensure that all the risks are accounted for and mitigated to ensure a high level of protection. But can you think about another aspect that should be taken into account when protecting data? Well, the human factor, like the employees of the organization and even you, the data subject, should be taken into account. Yes, you. The source of a data breach could even be you. And this happened recently to Roku, the streaming service. After hackers obtained credentials such as emails and passwords from third party sources, they were able to gain access by basically seeing if the same credentials could be used somewhere else. And well, it worked. Once the hackers gained access to an account, they were able to make changes to the account. And they were even able to buy hardware from another site. So, yes, be vigilant and switch it up. If you can't track all of the passwords that you use, then use a password manager like Google. But if you don't want to use Google, then there are a number of password managers out there. Okay, now without further ado, it is time to get into the podcast, which is to read a privacy policy, break it down, and present it to you. And this week, I've decided to begin with Spotify's privacy policy for users of the Spotify streaming service, whether you are a paying customer or not. And I must say that the presentation of the privacy policy was quite nice. They put information into tables and it was laid out in such a way that was quite pleasing to read. But it was not possible to get access to the privacy policy from the app, which makes getting access somewhat difficult for app users. But those of you using the web player, the privacy policy would be on the bottom left hand screen. But you can always open your browser and search Spotify's privacy policy, and it should be the first link there. So, why is Spotify invading your privacy and processing your data? Who gave them permission to do so? Well, Spotify has four reasons for processing your data. The first reason is to fulfill the contract that you wanted with Spotify. You wanted to stream my podcast? Well, Spotify needs your data for that. They need your data so that they can create an account for you so that you can access it whenever and wherever you want, as well as to easily process your payment for your monthly subscription. By having an account, you can personalize your experience in any way you want, saving songs, following certain artists, etc. Furthermore, Spotify can easily diagnose, analyze, and resolve problems that you have in the application once you have an account with them. The second reason is for their legitimate interest or business interests. Well, Spotify is a business and it would like to grow and expand like every business. So, Spotify is using your data for one, allowing sharing via a link with someone else, possibly on another app. Two, to feed the personalization algorithm so that you can enjoy the app more. Also, to see how you respond to features in the app. Three, also to get market advertisements to you so that Spotify can continue running. Four, to fulfill contractual obligations with their third parties, such as the artists themselves or businesses who are advertising on the app. Five, to ensure the artist's intellectual property is not being infringed upon. And if their rights were being violated, then they would be able to take action and remedy the situation. Six, for legal claims. So if Spotify is in a lawsuit, they will use your data and present it as evidence. Seven, to help with future plans of the business and research and surveys. So helping launch new features or determining where to launch their service and customer satisfaction. And eight, to help with surveilling for fraud and other illegal activities. The third reason Spotify is processing your data is because of legal obligations imposed by the government. Your data should help Spotify comply with legal authorities such as law enforcement and the court. And the final reason Spotify is processing your data is because, well, you gave them permission to. So if you wanted additional features, Spotify is processing your data to be able to give you a feature that you asked for. And email marketing. But if you haven't expressly consented to the email marketing, then the law in your country states that your consent is not needed for this. However, you can still object and unsubscribe from the email marketing ads. So, what data is Spotify collecting? Well, according to Spotify, there's three situations in which they're processing your data. The first is when you sign up. Spotify is collecting your user data that you have typed into the application form or they have collected from third-party accounts such as Meta or Google. And the data are your profile name, email address, password, phone number, date of birth, sex, country, and if you are signing up for the Spotify Premium Student account, then university and college. As for your address, Spotify is collecting your location data from your IP address and use Google Maps to verify your address. Spotify collects your address to first check your eligibility for a service, to deliver notices required by law, to provide support options, for billing and tax administration, and lastly, to provide goods or gifts that you have requested. If you haven't created an account with Spotify, so if you are a free user, then they only collect data regarding your usage and your location. The second situation in which Spotify is collecting and processing your data is when you are using the service. So Spotify is collecting all the information on you about how you're using their application. So whether you are free or a paid user, what you're searching in the app, what you're creating in the app, as well as if you're connecting the app to third-party services or devices. Spotify is also using the data that the algorithm has created on you through your interaction with the Spotify app. So your likes, your dislikes, what you're more trending towards, etc. Spotify is also collecting the content that you provide during its promotion, so contests and sweepstakes, as well as any images, audio, text, titles, descriptions, notices, and other types of content that you freely give in the application. Furthermore, as you use the app, Spotify also is collecting a lot of technical data, so URL data, online identifiers such as cookie data and IP addresses, information about the devices that you use, so their operating system, what network connection you're using, what browser type, language, etc. Spotify is also collecting technical data for the digital rights management. So they're collecting data that would limit or restrict users regarding the intellectual property on the app, so to prevent copying or altering by users via the app. They're also collecting data on what version of the Spotify app you're using. They're also collecting the devices on your Wi Fi network that connect to the Spotify service. Your location data and your device's sensor data. So the Spotify is collecting data on how you move and hold your device. If you have consented to any additional features, such as using the microphone or paying the monthly subscription, they're also collecting that data. So, your voice data and your financial data, as well as survey and research data. The last situation in which Spotify is getting data is from external sources, so verification partners such as Share ID if you are signing up for the student premium account, third parties such as social media and the devices that is connected to the Spotify account like smartwatches, TVs, your car. However, if none of these apply, then they're not collecting this data. They're collecting data from partners for technical services, payment partners and merchants, advertising and marketing partners, and lastly, acquired companies such as Anchor, Soundtrap, Megaphone, and the Spotify Live app. If you're not using any of these, then they are not collecting any data via these other services. Before I move on, just last year in June, Spotify was fined by the Swedish Privacy Protection Authority, IMY, for shortcomings regarding transparency because when its data subjects requested information, it was given to them in such a way that they could not understand it, especially the technical data. But IMY stated that the violation, and I quote, was an overall low level of seriousness and the company was fined 5 million euros. So, how long is Spotify holding on to your information? So, Spotify will hold on to your data until one, you delete it. This can be done by you changing information in the app or by an official request to Spotify. Two, Spotify will automatically delete data after 90 days. Spotify, however, does not tell you what categories of data is being deleted after 90 days. And the last situation is if your account is deleted. Spotify does state that after deletion, your data may be held onto because it is required by law or for contractual obligations. Spotify does not tell you what categories of data will be retained for contractual and legal obligations. Who is Spotify sharing your data with? Spotify is sharing your data with third party services such as social media applications, car platforms, video assistants, etc. They're also sharing your data with the Spotify support community, other Spotify users, artists and record labels, service providers, payment partners, advertising partners, marketing partners, hosting platforms, scientific researchers, other companies that are part of the Spotify group, such as investors and acquired companies, law enforcement and other competent authorities, and lastly, buyers of Spotify. Spotify, in their privacy policy, provides you with further information on this, such as the categories of data that is being shared with these third parties, as well as why these third parties need your data. So, for example, artists and record labels have access to your user data, and this is to enable them to share news and offers with you. Another example would be scientific researchers. They have access to your user data and usage data. And this is for statistical analysis and academic research. But they only get this data in a pseudonymized form, which means that the data cannot identify you directly. Where is your data being sent to outside of the European Union? Spotify does not expressly state where it is going, but states that due to the global nature of their operations, Spotify shares personal data internationally with companies, subcontractors, and partners of the Spotify group in carrying out the activities described in their privacy policy. Spotify has also stated that to ensure their data transfers comply with applicable law and to offer your data the same level of protection as in the EU, they have added safeguards such as standard contractual clauses and adequacy decisions. For those of you who do not know what these are, let me tell you. Standard contractual clauses, or SCCs, are statements that are pre approved by the European Union and are put into contracts between two companies. And an adequacy decision is given to a country that the European Union trusts with its data flow because it has an adequate level of data protection. As of 2024, 16 countries have this decision. These countries are Andorra, Argentina, Canada, but only for commercial organizations, Faroe Island, Guernsey, Israel, Isle of Man, Japan, Jersey, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, Switzerland, Uruguay, the United Kingdom, and lastly, the United States, but only for commercial organizations certified under the EU US Data Privacy Framework. Spotify also states that it determines and uses additional protections for each transfer where necessary. For example, they use technical protections such as encryption and pseudonymization, and policies and procedures to challenge disproportionate or unlawful government requests. And now for the final part of Spotify's privacy policy, which is the list of your rights. By the way, these rights are universal, but in the privacy policy, Spotify shows you how to exercise your rights through instructions and links. First of all, you have the right to be informed about your personal data that they have on you, as well as how they process it, which is all of the information I've shared with you in this podcast. You also have the right to access your personal data. You have the right to correct any information that Spotify has on you, as well as have your data be removed and erased. But Spotify states that this right can be limited because of legal obligations imposed by the government for legal reasons such as a lawsuit, or Spotify's interests outweigh your right to have your data deleted. But Spotify must provide a good reason as to why their interests should outweigh your right for data protection and privacy. You also have the right to object to the processing of your data. You can limit or stop the processing of your personal data if it's incorrect, or the processing is unlawful, or if Spotify does not have a specific purpose to process your data. You also have the right to data portability, which means that you can request a copy of your personal data in an electronic form and you can transfer your data to another party's service. You can also withdraw your consent to anything you have given your permission to. And lastly, you have the right to file a complaint to Spotify, the Swedish Privacy Protection Authority, or your local data protection authority. Just this week, Klarna, the buy now, pay later law firm, was fined by the Swedish Administrative Court over 700,000 euros for privacy policy flaws. 2 years ago, the IMY, the Swedish Authority for Privacy Protection, conducted an investigation into Klarna Bank AB because of the complaints it received and found in its communication to its data subjects it did not have any purpose or legal basis for processing of personal data, incomplete and misleading information on the recipients of the personal data when shared with the Swedish and foreign credit information companies, no information on the countries the personal data is being transferred to, as well as no information on the safeguards put in place to protect the data when it's being transferred. And lastly, there was an incomplete information on the data subject's rights on deletion, data portability, and the right to object of processing of personal data. Do not underestimate your complaint. Data is king, but the protection of your privacy and data is queen. Now, before I leave you, I would like to end the episode with a little trivia question. And my question is, what is the maximum data breach penalty under the GDPR? A. Up to 20 million euros, or in the case of an undertaking, up to 4% of their total global turnover of their preceding fiscal year, whichever is higher. B. 10 million euros, or up to 1% of annual turnover, whichever is greater. C. 5 million euros, job suspension, and imprisonment up to 5 years. D. There is no maximum fine. And as per usual, I will share the answer with you in next week's episode. Thank you again for sharing your time with me today and gaining some data protection knowledge. And wherever you are in the world, I bid you good day, good evening, and good night. Until next time, bye!